Hello once again, and before I start today's production, considering what time of year it is, I just had a great idea for a movie about demonic baseball players, and thought that it would be, every time they slid in, they'd get bit on the neck, or, and I could call it Interview with an Umpire. So just a quick interlude before I start today's production. Hello once again, and I wanted to start out today's production just by showing a little bit of Dorothy, and we're not in Kansas anymore, and to also mention that this particular video is going to be about it's going to be about a little bit about our statutes and about the grand solar minimum that is on its way, exposing a little bit, doing a little bit of mirroring of this video and a little bit of mirroring of Max Egan's video. And so I hope you enjoyed today's production, and I hope it gives you pause and cause to ponder some of these details. All right. People say I should plan my,
came out, and this is why you have to have a birth certificate, because you are a maritime admiralty product under international law. Your body is considered a maritime admiralty product.
I'd like to thank all of my new subscribers, and really appreciate that. I've been gone for...
In 1868, there was a corporation founded. Anyone can incorporate a company. Well, in 1868, there was a company incorporated. And in that particular company, the founders of that company they referred to it as the United States Corporation. And they stipulated that anybody who would be a member of that corporation or work for that corporation would be called not an employee, but a citizen. So today, if you are asked, are you a citizen of the United States? What you think you're being asked is, are you lawfully in this country to do business? That's not lawfully what's being asked. They didn't ask if you're in America lawfully. They asked you a specific question. Are you, of your own volition, out of your own mouth, testifying that you are a citizen of the United States? Because in that way, citizen of the United States means you are an employee of a foreign corporation operating on the international maritime law. So today, the President of the United States is the president of a privately owned company. The symbols, the emblems, what these words mean, you're never going to suspect how far gone we really are. Did you know, for instance, that your birth certificate is a security on the stock exchange in the New York stock market? Did you know that? Because if you order your birth certificate, get a new one, order your birth certificate, it'll only cost you, sometimes it's free, it'll only cost you a few dollars. Order your birth certificate. On your birth certificate, all birth certificates in this country, on the bottom, it will tell you this is printed on security papers. Do not accept it not on full color security paper. Then on the right-hand corner, you will always have a series of numbers, red numbers, printed on the birth certificate. Those numbers are a security stock exchange number on the World Stock Exchange. You go to any good stock office and ask them, check these numbers in your computer and see how much this stock is worth, the certificate. And they will check it on the New York Stock Exchange and find your birth certificate is a stock on the stock exchange in America. Why? Because you are worth money to the international bank that bought you in 1930. We need to wake up.
And a lot of today's essay is going to be about the what's known as the grand solar minimum, where we, it's obvious in the statement itself. You don't have any sun. Everything freezes. It's essentially an ice age grand solar minimum. And Max Egan puts out, as a matter of fact, here, the grand solar minimum that is brought up in Uncomfortable Truth, you may need to consider, by Max Egan in the Crowhouse. Really well done in his conveyance of details and information of how people don't think, and I can pretty much start anywhere, or whether or not the government do you think our government is set up to step in and help everybody?
I'll give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into a harbor, all ships are referred to as female. Airships, rocket ships, sailing ships are always female. Why? There's a very good reason. Maritime Admiralty banking law says all ships are female because they're carrying items for money, and so consequently they are under Maritime Admiralty law. Let me give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into harbor, it parks at the dock, and it ties off at the dock. The captain has to provide for the port authorities a certificate of manifest, because yesterday the ship was not here, but this morning the ship pulled in, so it has manifested. So consequently, all the products, the $800 million worth of TVs or Toyotas, have manifested. So each one of those items coming off of that ship has come off of water. And each end they has come in a ship. And consequently, on a ship, all ships have a captain. The word captain comes from a Latin word capital, money. So the captain represents the money that's on board the ship. And as I said, the captain has to present to the port authorities a certificate of manifest for each and every item. How much does it weigh? What color is it? How many doors does it have? Etc. And consequently, the captain presents a certificate of manifest. The ship is sitting in its berth. Wherever a ship sits when it docks is called its berth. She sits in her berth. All the items, as I said, coming off that ship represent money. They came in on water. They're a Maritime Admiralty product. And this is true all over the world. Now, when you were born, your mother's water broke. And when your mother's water broke, you came out. And this is why you have to have a birth certificate, because you are a Maritime Admiralty product under international law. You are considered, your body is considered a Maritime Admiralty product. Your mother delivered you. This is why if you go to Sears and buy a refrigerator, they will ship it to you. They will deliver it. And that's why you were in your delivery room. Your mother was delivering a product. Maritime Admiralty, you came down your mother's birth canal. And once you, and as you're taking one of the televisions or the cars off the ship and it falls down and breaks, that's all right. Sometimes they're stillborn, so consequently you've lost money on that one. Therefore you have to have a death certificate, and it's always signed by the dock. The dock has to sign your birth certificate and your death certificate. All of these words and terms are Maritime Admiralty banking words. And therefore, if you understand lawyers and judges and courts and government are all under international Maritime Admiralty law. All religions, all churches in the world operate under maritime law. This is why all churches are divided into denominations, like 20s and 50s and 100s. Serious. This is why they're called denominations, because all churches are nothing more than the product of Maritime Admiralty banking.
I will leave a link in my description. Or would they just use all of the underground bases that have been created all over the world in such a quick time, curiously enough? I'm going to turn on a little bit of this sound and see how this plays out from whatever point I'm starting at here.
You're offering me some very, very bizarre foods, and
now he's talking about the palate and what people are able or willing to eat. And I should mention here that there is a buzzing in his video in the background, and so hopefully that it won't be too distractive. But I'll just turn this up a bit.
I simply
He's talking about vegan diets and whether or not people, if we had to hunt to survive, would some people or a lot of people be able to?
but I'm not going to limit my options and thereby limit my chances of survival. And when you look at situations on the earth, you look at people on the earth such as the Inuits who live in Alaska and in the frozen regions of northern Russia, you find that these people have a meat-only diet because it's the only thing that's available to them because of the ice that they're surrounded by. These are just interesting things to think about, folks. And when you look at how veganism has been promoted right around the world, and we've got all sorts of people going towards completely plant-based diets, when you factor in the coming grand solar minimum that's going to be unfolding within the next 5 to 15 years, it really is quite a sobering reality to have to face. And it really does appear that this has been done deliberately, and it's been done in such a way that many of the people who have adopted the vegan lifestyle simply are not going to be able to survive in a frozen environment. They're simply not going to have the skills necessary to do so, nor are they going to have the metabolism necessary to be able to consume whatever they need to consume in order to survive. And again, folks, I'm not speaking out against veganism or anything like that. I'm simply looking at what is coming and being realistic about it. Because no matter how much you try to ignore this, I mean, it's there and it's coming, and there's not anything anybody can really do about it. It's sunspot activity. You can't really control that, folks. It isn't part of any grand conspiracy. It isn't part of any type of depopulation agenda or war that the government is implementing themselves. It's simply part of a natural cycle. And it's coming, and the facts are in, and there's really no way to deny it, and there's no point even saying if this comes, because there's no if about it. It's coming, that's the way it is. And as I was mentioning last week on the radio show last week, the weather that we've seen in northern Washington this early in the year, the incredible chill that came across in late September, this is very, very abnormal, folks, and we're going to probably see this.
And, of course, speaking of abnormal weather, the strange weather that has been occurring, and in relation to, as I mentioned once again, and we'll bring up again, the grand solar minimum and solar maximum. Solar minima and maxima are two extremes of the sun's 11-year cycle. At a maximum, the sun is peppered with sunspots, and sunspots are areas that are reduced in temperature caused by concentrations of magnetic field flux that inhibit convection. And they have two sides, sort of a thing, sunspots. And solar flares erupt, and the sun hurls billion-ton clouds of electrified gas into space. Sky watchers may see more auroras, and space agencies must monitor radiation storms for astronaut protection. Power outages, satellite malfunctions, communication disruptions, and GPS receiver malfunctions are just a few of the things that can happen during a solar maximum. And so basically it's like an EMP. It knocks everything out, or to a degree starts creating what I've called in the past plasma burst activities. And why wouldn't a sunspot or a solar flare also be a plasma burst or direction of plasma? At a solar minimum, there are fewer sunspots and solar flares subside. Sometimes days or weeks go by without a spot. So then it goes into predictions. Then it goes into the prediction of solar cycle minimums or solar cycle maximums, and goes through a whole lot of NASA stuff and NASCAR. Let's take a look. Now let's take a look at the grand solar minimum maxima of history. The grand solar minimum maxima occurs. The minima occurs when several solar cycles. Wow, this is a tongue twister. Grand solar minima occur when several solar cycles exhibit lesser than average activity for decades or centuries. That was easy to say. Solar cycles still occur during these grand solar minimum periods, but are a lower intensity than usual. And repeated, a grand minima form is a special mode of solar dynamo operation. Okay, now we have all of these different minimum periods here. And if you want to just go ahead and take a quick look at the dates, The Homeric minimum period. I think that was one of the Simpsons episodes. We have the Roman warm period, a proposed period of unusually warm weather in Europe and the North Atlantic that ran approximately 250 BC to 400 AD. Doing the math on that would be 650 years. It was warm in Rome. The medieval warm period, the MWP, also known as Most Valuable Player in Climactic Change, known as the Medieval Climate Optimum, or Medieval Climactic Anomaly, was a time of warm climate in northern Atlantic region lasting from C. 950 to C. 1250. Another 400 years, and it was likely related to warming elsewhere while some of the regions were colder. Wow. All right, the Wolf minimum period is about the solar or solar magnetic activity is nearly a period of 11-year change in the sun's activity. Generally speaking, with the Earth cycle, the sun's north and south poles trade places. All right, now this pole reversal right. The sun's poles trade places. Okay, the Wolf minimum. Okay, the Sporer minimum. The Sporer minimum. Where is it? The Sporer minimum is a hypothesized 90-year span of low solar activity from about 1460 to 1550 when they started changing all the calendars, which is identified by John A. Eddy in a landmark 1976 paper published in Science titled Maunder Minimum. The Maunder Minimum. It occurred before sunspots had been directly and saw the hypotheses this and that. Now the Dalton minimum is a period of low sunspot count. You've got a low sunspot count. I wouldn't be planning on having any suns soon. But the Dalton minimum is a period of low sunspot count, representing the low solar activity named after the English meteorologist John Dalton, lasting from about 1790 to 1830, or 1796 to 1820, corresponding to the solar cycle 4 to solar cycle 7. So solar cycles have registered counts, apparently. That's 4 to 7 when we go with Dalton. Next here is the modern maximum. A modern maximum. Say 400 years of sun. Okay. The modern maximum refers to the period of relatively high solar activity, which began with solar cycle 15. I see each of the solar cycle. It reached a maximum in cycle 19 during the late 1950s and may have ended with a peak of cycle 23 in 2000 as cycle 24 is... today's, as you can see, in 2008 is when apparently this was done. And it's important to consider all aspects and avenues, in my humble opinion, and consider how long this particular winter is, and during this winter possibly prepare, in at least psychologically, if not in your life, for a much longer and more severe winter should the theoretical details actually occur. So with that, winter of course is coming. How tough it'll be, what is my essay and survey for this year's winter?
Well, there's a corporation called United States, privately owned, and it has a president. It's an extraordinary story of occult treason, high treason and crimes against the state. Make no mistake about it, there has never been a country on the face of the earth as far back into history as you can go. There has never existed a country in which the people rose up and demanded their right to be free. Never. The concept of human, spiritual, intellectual, and physical freedom is a totally concept that has never, ever existed on the earth. The only time that has ever come into existence was the founding of this country, where it was understood that we were sovereigns and we owned our bodies, and consequently, since 1868, we're now under International Maritime Admiralty law. Think about this. When cowboys in Indian movies, when the cowboys would ride into town, they'd get off the horse, they were wearing guns. How come they could walk into a bar carrying guns? And if two guys got in an argument, they could go out on the street and draw on each other in front of the sheriff's office, and the sheriff would do nothing. How come? How come that men could go out in the street and shoot each other in front of everyone and had nothing be done about it? The reason why is because before 1868, all Americans were considered sovereigns. And that's one of the nice things about being a sovereign, is you have the right to be yourself.
So I'm going sovereign. Who's with me?
England.
And so this is what all this is about, predominantly. Now we have, of course, all of the freedoms that we have as inmates, or citizens in our illustrious society, and where we have so many options that we can choose from, and there are some wonderful things. But to pay attention, to wake up as to whether or not we're preparing for global warming, and if this global cooling is what is actually going to happen. It's sort of one of those oxymoronic details that we kind of expect from our happy mind governors. So, thanks. I wanted to recap this just a little bit. Cute kitty, not too happy. To consider your survival techniques, and if something were to happen right now, would you be able to handle it? That's one curiosity and consideration that people, I think, is important. So I wanted to bring that up prior to ending this production. I wanted to make that point here in this video that was put out by Eric Dubé on the United States Incorporated. There's a lot to this, so I'll leave the link in my description. Once again, enjoy the data, and please comment in my channel. Okay. And it's going to be a relatively tumultuous winter, but I believe in this winter will continue on to spring in this particular year. And as Max Egan mentions in The Uncomfortable Truth, 5 to 20 years is the, he looks a lot more into, and a lot of people look more into it than I do. But I do like to bring up, as mentioned in some of these comments, details for curious consideration. So let's leave it at this, because it's a beautiful image. Thank you for watching this particular production, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will return, hopefully quite soon, with some more curious, interesting essays and good links. I think that's part of my value here, is to present good links that you can go to and give some consideration, and come on back after seeing that and comment again on my video. Thank you for watching, and hopefully talk to you soon. Hasta la vista.